Chapter 61. The catamaran dropped them off under an asymmetric dome that stretched over the venue's dock. Above them, the ceiling zigzagged up in inverted terraces, overflowing with lush vegetation. With a hiss of water, the turret of a small submarine peeked out over the surface, and a noisy gang of perfumed people clattered out of it and joined them on the jetty. They were greeted by a line of blank-looking clone prototypes who somewhat jerkily adorned them with lace made of fresh flowers. There was a good deal of snorting and giggling at the novelty of these bipedal drones, whose affected human characteristics were at the same time impressive and hopelessly short of the mark. Lance rolled his eyes at Ray as he received his flowery garland. He took it off and slung it over the neck of the next clone as he walked on. Ray grinned and lifted a flower from her wreath, inhaling deeply as she followed him into the Borvold group gathering. The evening did not end on a good note, largely because Ray couldn't handle her drink as well as she thought she could. It only seemed like yesterday she'd been out every night, bars and clubs and warehouse raves. Lance and the others. She'd held her own with the best of them. And now, back at the bar, in a noisy crowd of people drinking and imbibing all sorts of stimulants, Ray felt that flush of familiarity. Her comfort zone welcomed her back at last and raised a glass in her honour. Lance joined her for her first lychee and mango cocktail, but soon got a message from whoever he was meeting and drifted off to find them. Its fruity sweetness masked the cocktail's strength, and, after slurping her bulbous glass empty through 2 luminous straws, Ray sought another and took it on a tour around the venue. A familiar song drew her from the main bar to an adjoining hall. Some synth pop that had been popular when she was younger, a catchy number about being lonely at the end of a drunken night on the town. She hadn't heard it in ages, and the thought of a DJ playing it here brought a smile to her face. As she entered the concert hall, it surprised her to find that it wasn't a DJ playing the song, but the actual band, Hospital Panic, playing a live gig. It was that kind of party. Although relatively early, the place was already busy, and the dance floor jigged and gyrated with a decent crowd of suited execs, dancing sloppily and wearing light-up jewellery. The cocktails had warmed her up a bit, but Ray still considered herself too sober to join in. The sight of all these privileged ponces cavorting around was mortifying. She'd have to be in a proper state before she got involved. Ray gravitated towards a stall at the end of the room, dedicated to some novelty drink or other. The faint blue flame of burning alcohol flickered in the glasses and mouths of thirsty partygoers who tumbled off the dance floor to grab some extra fuel. She had a shot and, copying the others, inhaled the gas from one of the balloons hanging from the front of the stall. Following her nose, Ray found a dimly lit lounge resounding with the harmonic pang of handpans. 2 guys with baggy clothes and floppy hats sat cross-legged on an Arabic carpet, tapping rhythmically on their domed metal drums in mesmerising syncopation. Ray strolled about the drug-laced lounge where business people sat savouring the plentiful narcotic pleasures that the Borvold group offered. They sat on beanbags and giggled with one another, sat stretched out in hammocks, swinging slowly into oblivion, sat on each other in confused and clumsy hilarity. There was probably a good 30 or 40 people, but Ray could only see one person actually standing up. A woman, about her age, squeezed into a tight suit that fell somewhat short of being either fashionable or professional. She was dancing alone, staring vacantly out of the large glass exterior wall where a variety of luminescent jellyfish swam through the dark water on the other side. The woman stared at them, dancing vaguely to the music, barely hanging on to her handbag, which trailed on the floor by her side, occasionally spilling her possessions. Ray took a pull on a vacant water pipe that her eyeline told her was bubbling with a mild synthetic tryptamine. Then, wandering off again, slightly startled by the geometric patterns now presenting themselves to her, stopping only to relieve a passing service drone of a glass of champagne and a fried shark appetizer, the fishy canapé wasn't to her taste. So Ray sought the wares of the next bar to freshen her mouth. On her way, she clocked Lance at a table with a pair of young business executives. They were off in the corner, away from the hubbub of the rest of the room, and seemed engrossed in whatever they were discussing. Wiggling through a huddle of delegates crowding the bar, Ray found her way to the wooden counter. This was a top-shelf free bar, and she didn't recognise half of the bottles racked up on the wall. "So what are those, then?" she asked the bar drone, pointing at a collection of small, dagger-like bottles filled with something dark. "Ampules of a 200-year-old cognac recovered from a shipwreck in the Sulu Sea." "Is that right? Well, I'll have one of those, then." "And a lager." "Foster's okay?" "Lovely, thanks." Ray plucked the lid from the glass ampule and peeked over the shoulders of the crowd to check on her old friend. Lance was still sitting with his business contacts. She caught his eye, raised her antique cognac, and bowed her head. He smiled and raised his glass in return. Given the constant uncertainty life was throwing into her face each day like a bucket of cold water, Ray thought it was only fitting to enjoy this fleeting moment. Here she was at a fancy party with a free bar, and who knew what tomorrow would bring? A ring of suits next to her burst into laughter, and Ray took a long pull on her cold lager. Maybe the RMZ. Maybe a laboratory. Maybe a promising new career. Maybe a complete mental breakdown. It was hard to say, so in the face of it all, she raised her drink to herself. Cheers. Finishing her beer, Ray lifted a hand for the bar drone's attention. It started hovering over to her, but somebody else leaned over the bar and stopped the machine before it reached her. A burly woman, mid-50s, and clearly worse for wear, grabbed the drone and started regurgitating a long drinks order with some difficulty. Ray rolled her eyes. Some people. Staring at the shelves of spirits on the wall behind the bar, Ray recognised the effects of the booze. She found herself squinting at her surroundings with a cynical eye. Fragmented by the glass bottles and the segmented mirror on the wall, his broken image leaned into her and purred. "Drink up, baby. You might as well enjoy yourself." Ray sighed heavily, cursing Perdita for whatever brain damage she'd inflicted upon her. The bar drone reached her, and she ordered something absent-mindedly, a well of regret in her chest. "Ray, forget this bullshit. The job tomorrow, the recusancy, the corporations. Come on, fuck it. This isn't you." The drone set a small empty glass before her and poured a thick amber fluid into it. Mr. Thumb lowered his head down next to the glass and watched the glug and swirl of the service with manic glee. "Drink up with me now. Let's party. You're good at that. This you can do." Ray was lost, suddenly ready to cry. She closed her eyes and talked silently to herself. I don't know if I can handle this. You, I mean, I don't know if I can live like this. You're a fucking monster. Face stiff with self-pity, Ray poked her drink around the top of the bar with her forefinger. Mr. Thumb lifted the base of the glass with his fingertips and urged it up to her lips. Drink up one more time and be with me. She let the spirit slide idly from the glass and down her throat. A wolf's hunger in his eyes, Mr. Thumb licked his lips and grunted his approval. Just a kiss, that's it. Give in. Give up. Make the choice. Blink and it is done. Be with me now. I'll keep you from their wretched disappointment. The kick in the teeth, the slap in the face. He whispered to her. No one will accept you. No one but me. That's it. Drink up. With great attention, Ray set the glass back on the bar. She cricked her neck once, took a deep, steady breath, and looked him dead in the eye. Somewhere inside her, a quiet voice whispered, "Fuck it." And in that instant, Ray's self-control dropped like a heavy curtain to the floor. Get out my face. Go on, fuck off. She puffed herself up and pushed him in the chest with both hands. I said, fuck off. For the briefest moment, Mr. Thumb smiled with something that might have been pride. Then he disappeared completely. The streak of victory that flashed through Ray switched to horror as the image of Mr. Thumb was replaced by the enraged, burly woman who'd accosted the bar drone a minute ago. She'd been stood there the whole time, and apparently Ray had just pushed her in the back and told her to fuck off. Without taking her eyes off Ray, the woman thrust her drink into the hands of one of her companions and bunched her fists. You fucking want some then, do you, love? She drawled. And all hell broke loose.